Hello there. In this lesson, we will create an awesome logo animation for an imaginary wild animal shelter. This type of animation is super popular. There will always be a company asking you to create an animation where all of its employees come together with the company's logo. In this lesson, we will delve deeply into the world of 3D space and After Effects and 3D camera movement. We will also learn how to build the project smartly so that you can easily change to a different image or add a new image without affecting the animation. This animation consists of 3 main animated parts. We will create each part separately and then connect and time them together. So let's dive straight into it. Hi, and welcome to the final lesson for this course. Let's start the lesson by seeing how this logo is made in Illustrator. For this, let's open the main folder we created for the course and enter the AI folder. Now, let's open the 5th logo. This design is also split into several layers. There's a background layer, a layer for the orange rectangle, a layer for the main text, which is an outline text layer. That means that this is not a text layer that we can change the text. Next, and a layer for the slogan. The slogan is a regular text layer written in the Montserrat font. Alright, and now, as always, before diving into After Effects, we need to think of an interesting way to animate it. As I always say, it's very important to create a rough storyboard sketch of the idea that can connect to the concept of the logo. Let's open the ideas file and check out what I have planned for this animal shelter logo design. Since the company is all about providing a home for animals, I thought it would be cool to have all the animals come together in the logo. That way, we can show that the company is bringing all these animals together and giving them a home. And just so you know, this is the kind of animation that big companies and corporations use all the time. Okay, and now let's open After Effects together. We can close this window. And so that we can all see the same panel arrangement, let's click on Default. Now let's move on to creating our first composition. We'll name it Logo Animation 5. Next, let's go to 3D Render. Since in the previous lesson, we used the Cinema 4D renderer, let's make sure we are currently on Classic 3D, not Cinema 4D, because we don't need to use that renderer in this project. Once done, let's go back to Basic and continue with the composition settings. This time as well, we will work in Full HD format, which is 1920 pixels in width and 1080 pixels in height. Then, let's set the frame rate at 30 frames per second, and the composition will be 20 seconds long. We'll keep the composition background black. And finally, click OK. Now let's import our logo design into the project. Double-click on the empty area in the project panel. Then, go into the AI folder and select the 5th logo. Make sure not to check this function and press Import. Here, we already know that we need to select Composition, because we want this file in separate layers. And here, we'll select Layer Size, because we want the layer boundaries to match the object's size, not the document's size. And now, let's import the animal pictures to our project. You can find them in the Assets folder. I downloaded these pictures from the Envato website. You should now see another folder here called New. Ignore it for now. We will get to it at the end of the lesson. In the meantime, let's select all the pictures here and click Import. Now let's click here to see the pictures in a more organized form. And before we begin working on the first scene, let's save the project and give it a name. This time, we'll do it using the shortcut Ctrl+S. Now let's find the folder we created for the lesson. Enter the AE folder and give the After Effects project we're working on a name. You can select this project to sample the name and change it to 5_trust. Once done, click on Save. Now let's learn how to deal with projects with many pictures, where we may need to change the pictures at any time in the project. Because the client can always ask us to change or add a new picture along the way. To create the project in a way that allows us to quickly change the pictures without affecting the animation, we need to create a pre-comp for each picture. So, let's create the first pre-comp with the first picture. To create a new pre-comp, press Ctrl+N. Let's name this pre-comp Photo 1, and decide that it will be in a format of 1080 by 1080 pixels. You can leave the other settings as they are. Now click OK. Great, we have automatically jumped to the new pre-comp. You can find it in the project panel as well. Now let's drag the first picture into this pre-comp. As you can see, it's quite large, so let's press S and resize it to fit the dimensions of this pre-comp. I think 30 is excellent. Now let's move the photo here, so we can see this teddy bear. And now, let's make the corners of the image rounded. And we will do it using the track matte function. Let me show you what I mean. We need to ensure that we're not selecting the layer. Now, make sure we're using the rectangle tool, with a white fill color and no stroke. Next, double-click here. This way, we will create a rectangle that is exactly the size of this comp. And now, let's open the rectangle. Let's also open its path. And here, we will change the property called roundness. In my opinion, 100 is excellent. Let's close the layer, and now, we can use this shape as a mask for the photo, using a track matte function. If you don't see it, you can click here. And now, let's drag the track matte pick whip of the image towards the square. And there you have it, we've created rounded corners for the image. So basically, this image will only be visible within the borders of the square. Okay, I'll place the photo here. And now let's learn how to prepare the second picture, but without repeating all the actions we've done so far. For this, we need to duplicate the pre-comp of the first image through the project panel. So let's select the composition and press Ctrl D. Automatically After Effects will call the new composition photo 2. And that's great for us. Now let's enter this composition. To replace the image and keep the same track matte settings, we'll select the image layer here. And now, let's drag the second image onto it while holding the Alt key. Finally, let's adjust the size and position of the image. By holding Alt, while dragging the new photo onto the previous one, we basically replace between them, while keeping the settings from the first photo. And now, let's move on to creating the composition for the next image. So, let's select this composition and duplicate it with Ctrl D. Let's go inside it. Select the image we want to replace and drag the new image onto it while holding the Alt key. Now let's reposition the new photo. Awesome! Now, let's repeat this action until we finish all the images. It's good that we're doing the same action many times because that way, you'll remember it better. Okay, so after we've created all the pre-comps for each image, we can close them from the Layers panel. But instead of doing it manually, let's use a handy shortcut. Hold down the Control key and press the W key several times until we close all the pre-comps for the images. If you accidentally close the main composition as well, just double-click it in the project panel. Alright, and now, to keep things organized in the project panel, let's create a new folder called Animals Pics. Next, let's select all the images and drag them into this folder. And now, let's create another folder called Precomps, and drag all the precomps for the images into it. Awesome, and before we move on, let's press Ctrl S to save everything we've done so far. Now, let's open the Precomps folder and drag all the precomps for the images into the main composition. You can close this folder now. And now, we'll learn how to spread these layers in 3D space. For this, first, we need to create a new camera. So, right-click here, go to New, and select Camera. We'll work with the one-node camera, with a 35mm lens. Click OK. And now, for the camera to interact with these precomps, we need to convert all these layers into 3D layers. So, let's click here to access the 3D layers function. And now, let's select all the layers and convert them into 3D layers. And to make it more convenient for us to spread the layers in the 3D space, let's switch our preview to Custom View 1. We can turn off the transparent background to see what we are doing better. We can also set the preview screen to fit. And now, let's understand what is going on here. So here, we can see our entire scene from the side. This is where the camera is located, and here are all the layers currently stacked on top of each other. Now, we can select the second image and move it along the Z-axis handle. We could also move this layer through the layer itself. For this, let's press the P key to see the position property. And now, we can change the value of the Z-axis manually. Now, let's select the first image and press P to see its position as well. As you can see, the value of the Z-axis, it's currently set to 0. Let's change the Z-axis value for the second image to 500. Now, let's select the third image and press P to see its position also, and change the Z-axis value to 1000. Why 1000? Because it's 500 pixels after the second image. This way, we maintain a consistent distance between the layers in three-dimensional space. Let's move on to the next layer and place it after the third picture. Instead of selecting it and moving it manually like this, we can simply change the Z-axis value to 1500. Okay, you got the idea. Now let's enlarge this panel, select all the layers, and press P to see their position. Then, let's change the Z-axis for each one of them, adding 500 pixels to the value of the layer in front of it each time. Alright, and now, let's click here to make sure no layer is selected, and press P once, then once again, to close the position for all the layers at once. Next, let's go back to Active Camera to see how our scene looks through the camera we created. And now, let's move on to the next part of the project and keep organizing the images across the 3D space, and mix up their position to keep things interesting. It's going to be a fun ride. So see you in the next part. But before you dive into the next lesson, I highly recommend that you take a 10-minute break. Get up from your chair, do some light stretching, and drink a glass of water. This will help you to recharge your brain for the next lesson. Welcome back. So, let's learn how to randomize the images across the 3D space. First, we can start by moving the image to the sides. To do that, and continue to see how the scene looks through the camera, we can work with two views. When working with this method, it's important to pay attention to the blue frame here. It means that we are currently selecting this panel, meaning that all the settings here will apply to this panel only. If I tweak the preview background, we will see it on the right panel only. Now, when we click here, we will select this panel. And now all these settings will apply to it only. So, in this panel, we will see the scene from a top perspective, that is, from above. Now, I don't want you to do this with me, just listen. I want to explain what's happening here. We can also work here with Custom View 1. And now, if I move the camera forward along its Z-axis, in the right panel, we will see the images getting larger. It's important to understand that we are not increasing the layer size of the object, but rather zooming in with the camera, making it appear larger. In other words, in this panel, we see the scene through the camera's lens. Okay, so I will select this panel and set it back to the top view. And now you can do it with me. Let's move to this area using the middle mouse click. If you don't have the middle click on your mouse, you can hold down the space bar and drag the screen with the mouse. Alright, now, before we position the images and move them to the sides, let's move our camera a bit backward. And now, let's select the first image, hold the Control key, and select every second layer. Now, let's get closer and move these layers to the side using the X-axis. Like this. Once done, let's click on the small square here, and tag these layers with a different color. This will make it much easier to select the rest of the layers. Now, click on the square of this layer, and choose Select Layer Group. Now let's move these layers to the side. Like this. Next, let's select the camera, and move it forward and backward to check how the motion looks with the current arrangement of the pictures. As you can see, everything is too tight. In my opinion, we need to shrink the pictures a bit. To do this, let's select all these layers, press S, and change the scale of all of them to 30. Now when we move the camera, we'll have some space between the pictures. Let's see how it looks. That's much better. Alright, and now let's animate our camera. Let's go to the beginning of the timeline and move the camera to the point from which we want it to start moving. Somewhere around here, before the last picture. Now let's press P and create the first keyframe with the current value. Then, let's move to the 10th second and move the camera backward, like this. Let's see how it looks. It looks great. It's a good time to press Ctrl S to save everything we've done so far. And now that we have the camera motion, we can navigate the timeline and arrange the pictures in a more interesting way. For example, we can stop at this point in time. We can lift the wolf up here, which is easy to do from this panel. Now let's move forward in time and move the fox here. Next, let's move forward in time. And we can place the leopard down here. So, let's continue doing that until we finish arranging all the animals' pictures across the 3D space. Our goal is to scatter the pictures in such a way that when the camera reaches its last point, all the pictures will be approximately in the center of the scene. We'll understand why we're doing this very soon. For now, just moving forward in the timeline and continuing to arrange the pictures. For now, this looks good. Let's see how it looks at the beginning of the camera's movement. But before that, let's select this panel and set the preview to fit, so we can see the entire frame. Alright, and now let's see if there is a picture we need to adjust. We can move the leopard here. At this point, the camera is passing right through the picture, and I don't like that. So, I'll stand at the problematic frame and move the picture to a slightly different position. There is another picture here that needs to be moved. We can move it a bit more to the right. Everything looks good so far. And now, let's learn how to create a cool depth of field camera effect in our scene. This means that some parts of the images will be blurry, and some will be in focus. To do this, let's close the camera and open it again. Now, let's open the camera options. By the way, instead of doing it manually, we can simply press the A key twice. Alright, and now let's activate the depth of field. Note that a new line has appeared in our camera. If we change the focus distance, this line will move. This line defines where the focused part will be. To understand what we're doing, let's raise the aperture to 100. Now we can see the depth of field better. Currently, the focus is next to the zebra layer, so this layer is in focus, and the rest of the layers are not. We can move the focus to the position of the dog layer. To see where to move the focus point, we can select the dog layer from this panel. That way, we can see its position in the top view. Now, we can move the focus distance to that point. Alright, I'm sure you got the point. And now let's place the focus distance somewhere in the middle of the camera lens. And since the camera is moving, it will look like the focus changes as the camera moves from one image to another. Let's check out how it looks. It looks awesome. Now, we can close the camera and continue. And now, let's press Ctrl Y to create a solid that will function as our background in this scene. Change the name to BG. Make sure the solid is the same size as the composition, and change its color to white. Now let's move this layer down, and we won't make it 3D, so that it won't be affected by our camera's movement in the scene. That way, the background layer will stay in place when the camera moves. Alright, once we finish composing the scene in the 3D space, we can go back to working with View 1. And now, let's select all these layers and press Ctrl-Shift-C to pre-compose them all. Let's call it PixComp, make sure both options are selected, and hit OK. Now we are ready for the next step, where we will learn how to combine the logo of the company with the scene of the images. So first, let's find the logo text and drag it into our composition. In the next step, we need to make the pre-compose of the images visible only within the text boundaries. To do this, let's click here and use the track matte function again. We want the pre-comp of the pictures will use the text layer as a mask. Therefore, we will drag the track matte pick whip of the Pix pre-comp towards the text layer. Now the text layer functions as a matte for the image pre-comp. Alright, and now let's press S and scale up this layer. As you can see, it's very pixelated right now. Question: what function should we apply to the Illustrator layer to maximize its quality? To solve this problem, let's click here and apply the collapse function to this layer. Now, the text is crisp and looks great. Once done, let's return the size to 100. Now, let's go to the point in time when the camera motion ends in the image pre-comp. Let's say, at the 10-second mark. Now, let's create the first keyframe for the scale of this layer, to tell After Effects that at this point in time, we want this layer to be this size. Now, let's go back to the beginning of the timeline and scale up the layer until it covers the entire screen. We can grab the layer from this point and scale it while holding Shift. Let's write 3000 here. And that's what we've got now. But we don't want to see the text shape at all at this moment. So, we need to adjust the position for it as well. For this, let's press Shift-P, and now let's go to the 10-second mark. We'll set a keyframe with the current value because we know that this layer needs to be where it currently stands at this point in time. And now, let's go back to the beginning of the timeline and move the layer slightly to the right. Now, we need to scale it up and continue synchronizing both parameters until we don't see the text parts. Okay, let's write 6800 for scale. And make sure we don't see the corners of the text. Alright, and now, let's find a good point in time to start the shrinking of the text layer we just created. I think we can start this animation from the second number 7, since this is the point where all the pictures are seen in the frame. So, let's select these two keyframes and move them to the second number 7. This is so that the text starts the animation from the second, rather than the beginning. Let's see how it looks. As you can see, the text moves very quickly towards the end. This happens because there is a huge change in the value parameter of the scale within a very short time. To fix this, let's select all the keyframes and press F9 to ease them. Now, move these two keyframes to frame number 6 to make the animation a bit longer. Let's see it now. It looks better. Now, let's go to second number 10 and create the part where the text turns white. To do this, we can enter the composition of the images. And now, to make this happen, duplicate the white background and place it above all layers. Now, press the left bracket to move this layer to the position of the time indicator. And now press T to display the opacity of this layer. Let's create a keyframe with an opacity of 0 here. Move to the second 12 and change the opacity to 100. Finally, let's select these keyframes and press F9 to ease them. Let's see how it looks. It looks good. Now, press Enter on this layer and change the name to White Fade. And now, when we return to the main composition, we can see that we have created the effect where the text turns white. Okay, now it's a good time to press Ctrl S to save everything we've done so far. And now, let's import the rectangle of the logo by dragging it into our composition. Now, for the best animation results, we need to convert this Illustrator layer into a shaped layer with paths that we can adjust and scale. To do this, right-click on the layer, go to Create, and select Create Shapes from Vector Layer. You can delete this layer now. Now open this shaped layer until you see its path. Then, go to the point in time where the text finishes its animation, which is the second number 10. Create the first keyframe for the path in its current shape. Now, go to second number 8. To see what we are doing, we can isolate the layer, and now, select the top points of the path, and drag them upwards, outside of the scene, while holding the Shift key. Now, select this part, and drag it down. Next, let's zoom out a bit, select the side points, and move them to the sides. As you can see, a new keyframe was automatically created on this path. This means that the shape of this path will look like that all the way up until the second number 7. The shape won't change until it gets to the first keyframe. Only after that it will start shrinking. Alright, now let's select these keyframes and press F9 to convert them to easy ease. Next, let's hold the Alt key and double-click on one of the keyframes to change the velocity. Set it to 85 for both axes, and hit OK. Let's check it now. OK, and now let's disable the isolation, close the layer, and see how it looks in relation to what's happening in the scene. I think the rectangle animation starts too early. To fix this, press U to see the keyframes on this layer. And now, let's find a better time for this animation to start. I think it should start from the second 9. So, select them, and move them to second number 9. Let's check it now. Okay, let's leave it like this for now. And move on to the next part of the animation, which is to create a background for the main comp we are currently in. As you can see, if I turn on the preview transparency background, we don't have any background right now. So let's create one. For this, let's select the background layer from the original logo design. And let's create a solid in the color of that background. Finally, move the solid down. And now, we have a nice background in the scene. Great! We can now move on to animating the logo's slogan. So, let's bring the slogan layer into our scene. And now let's place it in the scene. We can go forward in time to see where to move it. Now, hold down the Shift key and move it down using the arrow keys on the keyboard. And now, to avoid it interfering with the animation, let's position this layer below the rectangle so that the rectangle will hide it. This way, we only see it when the rectangle shrinks. Great! Now let's create a cool sweep that will pass over the slogan to capture the viewer's attention. For this, let's click here to ensure we are not selecting any layer, and select the rectangle tool. Set the fill to white, and make sure the stroke is off. Now, zoom in a bit, and create a rectangle that looks like this. Now, let's select this layer and press R. Let's rotate the layer by 30 degrees. Now, let's go to the second number 11. Go back to the selection tool. Move this layer here while holding the Shift key. Now press P to see the position property for this layer, and then create the first keyframe. Next, go to second 13 and move the layer here while holding the Shift key. Then, select these keyframes and press F9 to make them easy ease. Awesome! Now, let's press Enter on this layer and change the name to Slogan Matte, or you can call it Slogan Sweep. Alright, now let's position this layer above the slogan layer. Click here to see the Track Matte function, and now drag the Track Matte pick whip of the white rectangle towards the slogan layer. This will ensure that the rectangle is only visible within the slogan shape. Finally, let's turn back on the slogan layer. Then, click here and apply the collapse for this layer. And now, let's see how it looks. Looks nice. Let's press Ctrl S to save the project. And now, let's move on to the next part and create an outro animation for the entire scene we've created. Welcome back. So, let's create an outro animation for this scene. But before that, let's organize our project a bit. First, let's select these two layers and tag them in orange. That is because these two layers create the slogan part animation. Next, we'll tag this layer in brown. And these two layers will also tag in brown, because these three layers relate to the same part of the animation of the main logo. Great, and now, to make this animation end with a white background, let's duplicate this orange rectangle layer, tag it in a brighter color. Now press U to see its keyframes. Go to the second number 13, and move them somewhere around here for now. Then, right-click on one of the keyframes and reverse their animation. Then, move the keyframes to the second number 13. Now, let's change the color of this layer to white, and position it beneath the orange rectangle. That is how we created the white background that needs to be seen at the end of this animation. And now, let's create an outro animation for the rest of the layers in the scene. So first, select the text layer, hold Ctrl, and select the orange rectangle layer. Press S, and go to the second number 13. Create a new keyframe for the orange rectangle, and another for the text layer. Now, let's move to the second number 15, and scale down the layers to 0. Next, let's select these keyframes and press F9 to ease them. Now, hold Alt and double-click on one of the keyframes to change the velocity. Let's see how it looks. Looks great. Now, let's stand at the second number 15. You can close these layers now. Press N to trim the work area to this point in time. And now, let's watch the entire animation from start to finish. It looks great. And now, let's learn how to add new images to our animation. Because this can be a very possible scenario when creating animation with lots of pictures. So first, let's click twice on the project panel and enter the folder name New. We will select the 3 new images and click Import. To keep our project organized, let's open the image folder, select all the images, and tag them in green so we know they've been used. Now, let's place the new images in this folder. To see the order of the images more conveniently, we can click here to arrange them by their color. Okay, now let's enter the composition of the images. And let's say we were asked to add new images to a scene. To do it in the fastest way possible, First, we need to duplicate the composition we already have in the scene through the project panel. So select composition number 12 and press Ctrl D. Now let's enter the composition. Then select the image we want to replace, and now we'll drag the new image in its place while holding the Alt key. Once done, position the image and tag it in green so we know it has been used. Great, and now let's create another one. For this, we can duplicate this composition, enter it, and replace the image there as well. So, while the elephant pic is selected, find the new image, hold Alt, and drag it onto the elephant. Now let's adjust the size and the position of the new picture, and then tag it in green as well. Great, let's do it again. We'll duplicate this composition, enter it, select the image we want to replace, and replace the image here as well. Now let's adjust the size and the position of the new image. And finally, tag this image in green. Great job! We can close the new precomps, and now I want to teach you how you can integrate these new precomps into our animation very quickly. First, I'll show you how not to do it. So, don't do it with me. We'll do it together shortly. So, one way to do it is to bring the new precomp into the composition, make the layer 3D, and then try to find a good spot for it in the 3D space. As you understand, it can take us a lot of time. Alright, and now I'll show you a better way to do this. You can do it together with me. So first, we need to decide where we want to place the new image. Let's say somewhere here, between the turtle and the dog. Next, we can duplicate the turtle precomp using Ctrl D. Then, we can move it here for now, because this is approximately the place I want to insert the new image. And now, just like we switched between images within the compositions of the images, we can use this method to switch between the precomps. So, let's select the new duplicate, and drag the composition with the new image onto the duplicated composition, while holding the Alt key. This way, you'll keep all the data of the duplicated precomp and can easily switch between the precomps. And now, we can press P on the new comp and place it wherever we want. So let's adjust the position of the new image until we get something that we like. Let's check that the camera is not colliding with the new image. We can lower it a bit. Great! Now let's practice this again and insert the second new comp. Okay, first we need to find the spot where we want to put the new image. Then, we can just copy the fox, move it to that spot, and swap it with comp number 14. Once that's done, just hit P and move it around a bit until it fits in with the rest of the scene. I'll place it here for now, and then go back and forward with the time indicator to check how that looks in relation to the scene. I think we should move it here. Looks nice. Alright, let's do this one last time. I want a new picture here. For this, we can copy the cat, then move it here, and swap it with comp number 15. And now, press P, and find a better spot for the cheetah. Sometimes it takes forever to find the right spot, but it's cool. That's just part of the job. Now let's hit Ctrl S and save the project. Alright, and now I don't want you to do it together with me. I want you to just listen. Let's say the client wants us to replace a specific image with another image, or even a video instead of an image. So that's not a problem at all. All we need to do is enter the comp of the image they asked us to replace. Now we can import the video. I will choose the video I used in one of my courses. Let me just find it real quick. Alright, and now, all we need to do is select the layer we want to replace, and drag the new layer onto it while holding the Alt key. I can't see the video, because it ends at second 7. Therefore, I'll move the time indicator here. Now, I need to adjust the position and size of the video. And if I go back to the main composition, I won't see the video. This is because we are at second number 9. and my video ends at second number 7. The comp is clearly here, but because the video layer has already ended, I don't see anything. In cases like this, you can slow down the video using the stretch function here. So now, we can see more of the video, and when I go back to see it in the main comp, we will see the new video. Okay, I'll press Ctrl Z a few times until I see our cheetah again. And now, let's go back to the main composition and see the entire animation one last time before we render the project. Everything looks great. And now, before rendering, let's organize the project panel. First, let's create a folder called Assets. Drag the folders with the logo layers, animal pictures, and solids into it. Now let's tag the main composition in blue. Next, drag all the precomps we created during the project to the precomps folder, except for the main composition. Now, let's close all the precomps. And because we worked on a complex project, let's clean it up before rendering, so that we don't encounter unexpected issues during rendering. Question: what action should we take to clean the project before rendering? For this, go to Edit, Purge, and select all memory and disk cache. Hit OK, and wait for a few seconds. Now let's press Ctrl M. In output mode, choose H.264, 40 Mbps. Select to render the animation to our renders folder. Check for the name. Click Save. And then render. Now, let's wait for a few moments. Let's see what we've got. Looks great. Now you can upload the video you created in this lesson on social media and showcase it on your portfolio website. Alright, and now, let's go back to our project and close it. Don't forget to close Illustrator as well. And with that, we have finished the course. I hope you enjoyed the course and learned many new and interesting things. And I hope to see you in the next one. Hi there! I hope you found the lessons helpful and learned some new and interesting things. To better remember everything we covered, I highly recommend practicing by completing this homework assignment. Your task is to recreate this cool animation. You have the freedom to change the colors and add any additional graphics you like. And whenever you face any issues or have some questions, feel free to check the AE project file to see the steps I took. Additionally, you can always reach out to me for help. Good luck!